I never thought I'd be telling this story. It feels like the kind of thing that happens to someone else, but here I am, a regular guy named Jake, sitting in my living room, staring at the empty space beside me where my wife, Lisa, used to sit. I guess you could say I was the definition of a good husband. I worked hard at my job. I took her out on nice dates, and I always made sure to leave little notes around the house just to remind her that I loved her. We were married for 5 years, and even though we had our ups and downs, I thought we were solid. But recently, I'd started to notice little things that didn't sit right with me. At first, it was just a gut feeling. Lisa had started changing her routine. She'd leave for her yoga classes at odd hours, and I could swear she'd be coming home a little too glowy for someone who just finished a workout. I thought maybe she was just getting into a new fitness regimen. But when she started going out with her friends more frequently, especially on nights when I had business trips, I began to feel uneasy. Sure, I wanted her to have her own life, but there was something off about it. Things reached a boiling point during my latest trip to San Francisco. I was away for just 3 days, but when I got back, it was like things had changed overnight. The air felt different around Lisa, and she was acting all weird, like she was trying too hard to be sweet and accommodating. "How was your trip, babe?" she asked, her voice a little too chirpy. It felt forced. I shrugged it off initially, thinking maybe I was overreacting. But then I noticed the little things, her phone buzzing constantly, her being extra protective of it, and when I'd ask who was texting her, she'd give me that classic "it's just work" excuse, which, let's be honest, is the oldest trick in the book. I tried to let it be, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The last straw came when I came home early one afternoon. I had a gut feeling. Maybe it was instinct, or the universe trying to send me a message. I opened the door, and the first thing that hit me was the smell. It was faint, but it was there, like perfume that definitely was Lisa's. I stood in the hallway for a second, listening. Everything was quiet, too quiet. I walked through the house, and it felt like a scene from a movie. I made my way to the bedroom, and that's when I saw it, a pair of men's shoes by the side of our bed. My heart dropped. I approached carefully, heart pounding in my chest, and then I heard laughter coming from the bathroom. I didn't even think, I just flung the door open. There she was, Lisa, in the shower, and standing there with her was none other than Mike, our neighbor. The dude who borrowed my lawnmower last week. My blood ran cold. "Jake!" Lisa screamed, and the look of shock on her face was priceless, but there was a twist of anger too, like she was mad I had caught her. Mike scrambled out of the shower, his towel barely holding on. I felt my fists clench, my mind racing in a million directions. I didn't even know what to say or do, did I? Confront them right there. Yell, walk away. My brain was a storm, but the rage was boiling over. "Seriously, you're going to have sex with my neighbor while I'm out of town?" I managed to spit out, my voice thick with disbelief. Lisa's response was a mix of anger and feigned innocence. "You don't understand, Jake. You're never around. I felt alone." Her excuse made me see red. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry. This was a woman I thought I knew, and she was standing there dripping wet and defensive, like she hadn't just shattered my world with her infidelity. In that moment, I realized I had two choices. I could blow up and react out of anger, or I could think this through. So I decided to leave. I grabbed my things, walked out of the house, and slammed the door behind me. The last thing I heard was Lisa calling after me, and that only fueled my anger more. I needed a plan. I needed to figure out how to get back at her, how to make her feel at least a fraction of what I was feeling. I drove around aimlessly for a while, feeling like a lost soul, but deep down I knew I wouldn't let this slide. I was done being the good husband. It was time for some real action. This was just the beginning. After that explosive confrontation, I found myself sitting in my car outside a coffee shop, staring blankly at the screen of my phone. I didn't want to call anyone. I needed to process what had just happened. Lisa had crossed a line, and all I could think about was how I could turn this situation around. I felt like a game was afoot, and I had to be the one to play it smart. For weeks, I had been burying myself in work during my business trips. I'd come to rely on those trips as a break from the monotony of our home life. But now, instead of feeling like a break, they felt like a trap. I had been unknowingly giving Lisa the perfect opportunity to sneak around with Mike. No more. I had to take back control. I started by calling my buddy Adam. He's the kind of guy who always seems to know what to do in a situation like this. I could hear the surprise in his voice when I told him what was happening. "Dude, no way. I can't believe Lisa would do that," he said, and I could tell he was genuinely shocked. But more than that, I needed him to help me formulate a plan, one that would serve justice for what Lisa did. "Listen, I need your help," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I want to get back at her, but I want it to be smart. I want her to know how it feels to be betrayed." We brainstormed for a while. Adam suggested filming Mike and Lisa in some embarrassing situation, maybe catching them on their next date. But I didn't want to stoop to their level. I wanted something more calculated, something that would hit Lisa where it hurt but wouldn't be illegal or morally questionable. In the end, I decided that changing the locks on our house while I was on another business trip would be the most effective way to send a message. It would show Lisa that I was done with her games. I lined everything up perfectly. I told my boss I needed to extend my trip for a couple of days, claiming I had some meetings that required my presence. Meanwhile, I arranged for a locksmith to come by and change the locks while I was away. I figured that would give Lisa a real shock when she came home, expecting everything to be the same as always. The next few days felt like a whirlwind. I kept myself busy with work, trying not to dwell on the emotional fallout. But every time I got a text from Lisa asking when I'd be home, I felt a mix of satisfaction and anger. She had no idea what was coming. When the day finally arrived, I was a bundle of nerves. I left for the airport, and as my Uber pulled away from my apartment complex, I felt a sense of empowerment wash over me. This was my moment. I was reclaiming my life, and I was ready for whatever fallout came next. Once I boarded the plane and settled into my seat, I couldn't help but smirk as I thought about the look on Lisa's face when she discovered she couldn't get into our home. I imagined her trying to use her key, only to find it useless. The thought made me chuckle quietly to myself. The flight felt like it took forever, and by the time I landed, I was buzzing with excitement. I called the locksmith to confirm everything went smoothly. "All done, Jake," he assured me. "You're all set." I grinned. I couldn't wait to see how Lisa would react. I had no intention of going straight home. I wanted to let the suspense build. Instead, I decided to grab dinner with Adam to celebrate my newfound freedom. As we sat at a bar, I tried to focus on the conversation, but part of me kept wandering back to Lisa. I wondered if she was at home, confused and frustrated. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt, but I quickly brushed it aside. She had brought this upon herself. After a couple of hours, I finally decided to head home. As I approached the front door, I could see the lights were on inside. I took a deep breath and turned the doorknob, only to find it wouldn't budge. I chuckled to myself, knowing exactly what was happening on the other side. I knocked firmly, and a few seconds later I heard Lisa's voice on the other side of the door. "Jake, is that you?" she called, sounding bewildered. "Yeah, babe, let me in," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. I can't, the door is locked," she said, the panic creeping into her voice. "Yeah, I figured as much," I said, crossing my arms. I could feel my heart racing as I waited for her reaction. "Jake, this isn't funny. Why did you change the locks?" Her voice had risen an octave, and I could picture her packing back and forth. "Let's just say I needed to make a few changes," I said, my tone dark but playful. I could hear her fumbling with her keys, trying to get inside, but I knew she would be unable to. The realization must have hit her that this was no joke, and the silence that followed was golden. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and vindication. Finally, I decided to walk away from the door and take a seat on the steps, waiting for the inevitable blow-up. I wasn't going to give her a chance to manipulate me anymore. I would let her stew in her anger, and when the time was right, we would have a real conversation about what she had done. That night, as I sat on the steps, I realized that I was finally taking control back. It was time to lay everything bare and see where it led. I was ready for the showdown. I sat on the steps for what felt like an eternity, listening to Lisa's frantic attempts to get back into the house. I caught snippets of her desperate pleas and the growing frustration in her voice. It was satisfying in a way, like watching someone get a taste of their own medicine. The feeling of control over the situation was intoxicating. Finally, after what felt like a small eternity, I heard the sound of my phone buzzing in my pocket. It was Adam checking in to see how things were going. I texted him back. "She's freaking out. This is better than I imagined." "Good. You deserve this, man. Just stick to your guns," he replied. I could almost hear his smug tone through the screen. I leaned back against the steps, contemplating what to do next. Part of me wanted to let her stew for a little longer and enjoy the moment, but another part knew that I needed to confront her about everything. This wasn't just about the locks. It was about the betrayal, the lies, and the shattered trust. I finally stood up and walked around to the front of the house, deciding to face her directly instead of hiding outside. Lisa was packing back and forth in front of the door, her expression a mix of anger and disbelief. The sight of her was almost surreal. She was so out of her element. "Jake, you think this is funny?" she shouted as soon as she spotted me. Her hair was slightly damp from the shower and she was wearing a bathrobe that was hastily tied. "You tell me, Lisa, you didn't think this through, did you?" I replied, crossing my arms. "What do you mean?" she asked, feigning ignorance. "I was just taking a shower. What's with the locks?" "Oh, come on, don't play dumb. I know what you've been up to. You think I wouldn't notice the late-night yoga classes and the random texts?" I shot back, my voice steady, but laced with anger. Her eyes widened in shock, and for a moment I saw the facade of innocence crack. "Jake, I swear it's not what you think. I was just what? Spending time with our neighbor, you know, the one who borrowed my lawnmower." I interjected, feeling a surge of bitter satisfaction as her cheeks flushed. "Spare me the excuses, Lisa. I'm done listening to them. I didn't mean for it to happen. It was just a mistake." She stammered, her voice rising in pitch. I could see the panic setting in, and I reveled in it. "A mistake? Sleeping with someone else while I'm on a business trip is a mistake. You are such a liar," I shot back. "You think I'm going to buy that? You've been cheating on me in our own home." Lisa's expression shifted from panic to anger. "You have no right to say that. You're never around. What was I supposed to do? Just sit around and wait for you?" "Wait for me? You should have been honest with me if you felt that way." "Not go sleeping with my neighbor." I raised my voice, and the tension in the air thickened. I was tired of her excuses, tired of her shifting the blame onto me. She took a deep breath, trying to regain her composure. "Okay, let's talk about this. Let me in and we can work through it. Please, Jake, work through it. You think I'm just going to let you back in after what you did? I want you to really think about everything you've messed up," I said, feeling the gravity of the situation settle in. I paced around the porch while she remained at the door, her expression shifting between anger and desperation. "You're being ridiculous. You can't just change the locks and expect everything to be fine," she shouted. "Ridiculous? You think that's ridiculous? I found you in bed with another man, Lisa. You turned our home into a place for your betrayal." I yelled back, my heart racing with every word. "I didn't want it to be this way. I thought you'd never find out," she cried, her voice breaking. "Exactly. You didn't care enough to think about me or our marriage. You just did it. So why should I let you back?" In that moment, I felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to hear her plead and apologize, but another part of me recognized that I wouldn't feel satisfied until I really laid it all out on the table. "I'm done with all this, Lisa. It's time for you to face the consequences," I said, my voice firm. "Consequences? You think this is fair? You're punishing me for something that was your fault too," she shouted back, her eyes flashing with anger. "Fair? You want to talk about fair? You've been playing house with Mike while I've been working my ass off to provide for us. You want me to feel sorry for you?" I was done holding back. The hurt and betrayal fueled every word. The silence that followed was deafening. Lisa's bravado began to crumble as she saw the hurt in my eyes. I could tell she realized the gravity of what she had done. "Jake, I'm sorry," she finally murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sorry doesn't cut it. You broke my trust, and it's going to take more than a simple apology to fix this," I said, feeling a strange sense of resolve wash over me. "Then what do you want?" she asked, her voice shaky. "I don't know yet," I admitted, realizing that I was just beginning to process the implications of her betrayal. "But I do know that you need to start taking responsibility for your actions." With that, I turned and walked away from the door, leaving her standing there. I could hear her shouting after me, but it faded into the background as I walked down the street. I needed time to think and figure out what I wanted. I had taken my first step toward reclaiming my life, and I wasn't about to let it go to waste. As I walked away from the house, I felt both empowered and hollow. The confrontation was intense, and though I hadn't resolved anything, I had taken a crucial step toward reclaiming my life. I didn't have all the answers yet, but one thing was abundantly clear. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of Lisa's betrayal. I needed to make some decisions about the future of our marriage, and that required some serious reflection. I decided to head to a nearby park, a place I used to frequent during the early days of our relationship. It was always a spot where we could just be together, away from the chaos of life. Sitting on a bench surrounded by the rustling trees, I finally gave myself permission to feel everything I had been bottling up for too long. The anger, the betrayal, the hurt, all of it washed over me in waves. I'd trusted Lisa implicitly, and she had shattered that trust without a second thought. I pulled out my phone and started jotting down my thoughts. I needed to process everything, to lay it all out. I wrote about my feelings of anger and betrayal, how I felt like a fool for not noticing the signs sooner. I reflected on our marriage, the good and the bad, and realized that I had been blind to the cracks forming beneath the surface. I had poured my heart into making things work while she was sneaking around with someone else. As I sat there, a part of me began to consider the possibility of separation, not just because of the betrayal, but because I needed space to heal and figure out what I truly wanted. I had always believed in the sanctity of marriage, that love could conquer all, but now I wasn't so sure. Could I really forgive her? Would I ever be able to look at her the same way again? Hours passed as I sat there lost in thought. I realized I needed to talk to someone who could offer perspective. I decided to call my sister, Emily. She'd always been my confidant, the one person I knew would listen without judgment. "Hey, Jake, what's up?" She answered cheerfully, but I could hear the concern in her voice when I didn't respond immediately. "Hey, Em, I need to talk about something serious," I said, my voice faltering. "What's going on?" She sounded attentive now, ready to listen. I took a deep breath and recounted the whole story: Lisa's infidelity, the confrontation, the locks, everything. I didn't hold back. I needed her to understand the weight of what I was experiencing. "Wow, Jake, I'm so sorry." "That's a lot to handle," she said softly. "How are you feeling?" "I don't know, honestly. Angry, betrayed, confused. I thought I knew Lisa, but now I feel like I do even recognize her," I admitted, feeling the heaviness in my chest. "Have you thought about what you want to do next?" she asked. "That's what I've been wrestling with. Part of me wants to just walk away and never look back, but another part wants to talk to her again to see if there's anything worth saving," I confessed. "Jake, you deserve to put yourself first. Take your time to think about it. It's a huge decision," Emily advised, her voice steady and calming. "It feels like everything is crashing down and I'm trying to figure out how to rebuild," I replied. "Rebuilding starts with you, not with her. Think about what you need to heal," she said, and her words resonated deeply with me. After hanging up, I felt a bit lighter. I was still grappling with the betrayal, but I was starting to see a clearer path forward. I didn't have to rush into any decisions. I could take my time and figure out what I truly wanted from this situation. As the sun began to set, I knew I couldn't avoid confronting Lisa again. The locks had made a statement, but I needed to have a real conversation about our relationship. I needed to see if she was even willing to put in the effort to rebuild the trust she had shattered. I drove back to the house, my heart pounding in my chest as I approached the front door. I could see that the lights were still on inside. I took a moment to steady my breathing and mentally prepare myself for whatever was about to unfold. When I knocked, there was a brief pause before Lisa opened the door. Her eyes were red-rimmed and I could tell she had been crying. "Jake," she said, her voice shaky, "can we talk?" I studied her for a moment, searching for any signs of sincerity. Part of me was still angry, but I realized that I owed it to myself to hear her out. "Yeah, let's talk," I replied, stepping inside. We sat on opposite ends of the living room, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Lisa looked like she was struggling to find the right words. I took a deep breath and decided to break the silence. Why did you do it, Lisa? What drove you to cheat? I asked, my voice steady but laced with pain. She looked down, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know, I was feeling neglected, I guess. You were always gone and I felt so alone. That's no excuse for what I did, but it's the truth. Neglected. I thought you understood my work was important. I was trying to provide for us. I raised my voice slightly but then caught myself, realizing that I needed calmness for this conversation. I know, and I'm sorry. I should have communicated better, she pleaded, her eyes glistening with tears. But it felt like you were slipping away and I didn't know how to reach out. Reaching out doesn't involve sleeping with my neighbor, Lisa. That's betrayal, I said, trying to keep my voice firm. You didn't even think about how it would affect me or us. I know I was selfish, she admitted, tears streaming down her face now. I'm so sorry, Jake. I wish I could take it back. Wishing doesn't change what's happened. You need to understand that trust is earned, and right now, I don't trust you at all, I stated, feeling the weight of my words. I understand, she said, her voice breaking. But I want to work on this. I love you and I want to make it right. Just please give me a chance. I looked at her, torn between the love I once felt and the anger that still simmered beneath the surface. Could I truly forgive her? Did I even want to try? I need time, Lisa. I can't make any promises right now, I finally said, my voice softer but resolute. You've broken something that's going to take a long time to fix. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back, she replied, her voice full of determination. Then show me, I said, standing up. But that starts with you taking responsibility for your actions. This isn't just about you feeling guilty, it's about understanding the gravity of what you've done. As I walked away, I knew that the path ahead would be long and filled with challenges. But I also knew that I had taken the first step toward healing, and that was something I could hold on to for now. We would have to see if that was enough to build a future together, or if it was time to part ways for good. The decision loomed ahead, and I felt both terrified and hopeful at the prospect of what the future might hold. In the days that followed our conversation, I found myself trudging through a murky haze of emotions. Lisa's pleas for forgiveness echoed in my mind, but so did the pain of her betrayal. I was caught in the whirlwind of confusion, grappling with the question, could I truly rebuild what had been shattered, or was it time to cut my losses and move on? I took some time off from work, needing space to think and process everything without the pressure of deadlines and meetings. I found myself spending hours in that park, reflecting on my relationship and what I wanted out of life moving forward. Each day felt like a blend of clarity and chaos. Some moments I felt a flicker of hope that perhaps we could repair our marriage, while other moments were darkened by anger and disappointment. I began to notice the little things that had chipped away at our relationship over the years. Lisa and I had settled into a routine that had stifled our connection, and I realized that, in many ways, I had been neglecting my own needs too. When I was home, I was often preoccupied with work or tired from the long hours. Had I been so focused on providing that I had lost sight of the emotional aspect of our marriage? Determined to find some answers, I reached out to a therapist. After a couple of sessions, I began to face the hard truths about myself, my expectations, and my relationship with Lisa. I realized that I needed to communicate my feelings more openly and honestly, not just with her but with myself. The more I talked, the more I felt a weight lifting off my shoulders. I learned that it was okay to feel hurt and angry, but I also learned the importance of expressing those feelings constructively. Meanwhile, Lisa was doing her part to show me she was serious about changing. She reached out to a therapist as well and started attending support groups for infidelity. It was strange to see her taking action, and I couldn't deny that a part of me was impressed by her willingness to confront her mistakes. Still, every time I saw her, there was a cloud of doubt hanging over us, and it took everything in me not to let it consume me. One evening, after a particularly long day, I arrived home to find Lisa waiting for me with dinner prepared, a rare sight in our household. The table was set, candlelit, and soft music played in the background. For a moment, it felt like we were trying to recreate a memory from happier times. "Wow, this looks amazing," I said, trying to mask my nerves. "Thank you. I wanted to do something special for you, she replied, her voice steady but laced with vulnerability. As we sat down to eat, the atmosphere felt thick with tension. I could sense Lisa's anxiety as she fidgeted with her silverware. Jake, I know things are still tense between us, but I really want to reconnect. I miss us, she said finally, her eyes searching mine. I miss us too, but that doesn't mean we can just pretend everything is fine, I replied, my tone gentle but firm. There's still so much to work through. I know. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I want to earn your trust back, she said earnestly, her voice breaking slightly. You can't just say that, Lisa. It has to be backed up with actions. And honestly, I'm still processing everything. I need to see that you mean it, I said, trying to remain calm even as emotions swirled inside me. We finished dinner and the conversation shifted to lighter topics. For a brief moment, I felt a spark of the connection we once had. But as the evening wore on, the weight of our reality crept back in. That night, after Lisa went to bed, I lay awake, my mind racing. I didn't want to live in a state of distrust, but I also didn't want to ignore the hurt I felt. I knew that rebuilding trust would take time, and we were still in the early stages of that process. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself slowly opening up to the idea of reconciliation. Lisa continued to attend therapy, and I could see her making genuine efforts to be more transparent. She shared her feelings and fears, and it felt as if she was trying to peel back the layers that had built up over the years. Our late-night chats became a safe space for both of us to express our vulnerabilities. But even amidst the small victories, doubt still lingered. I was still haunted by images of her with Mike, and those memories would creep in during quiet moments. I often wondered if I could ever fully forgive her, and if I could, would I ever truly forget? During one of my therapy sessions, my therapist posed a challenging question. What does forgiveness look like for you, Jake? It struck a chord. I realized that forgiveness didn't mean erasing the past. It meant acknowledging it and choosing to move forward despite the pain. I decided to give our marriage one last shot, but with clear boundaries. I laid out what I needed from Lisa: transparency about her whereabouts, open communication about her feelings, and a commitment to work on our marriage together. It was important for me to establish that I wasn't just going to sweep everything under the rug. One evening, I sat Lisa down and explained my thoughts. I want to try, but it's going to take both of us. Being honest and committed, I said. I need to know that if we're going to rebuild this, we're doing it together. She nodded earnestly. I'm committed, Jake. I'll do whatever it takes. I can't change the past, but I want to be better for our future, she replied, her sincerity evident. We decided to take things day by day, allowing ourselves to feel the ups and downs of the healing process. There were days when I felt hopeful, and others when the anger bubbled back to the surface. But I started to see some progress. We began to connect on deeper emotional levels, and while it wasn't perfect, it felt like we were finally moving in the right direction. As I sat reflecting on everything, I realized that rebuilding trust wasn't just about Lisa earning my forgiveness. It was about me finding the strength to forgive myself for feeling betrayed. It was about both of us learning to communicate openly and honestly. And while the road ahead was still uncertain, we were willing to walk it together, step by step. It was a fragile truce, but I felt cautiously optimistic. The journey ahead would be long, but at least we were no longer standing still. We were moving forward, and for the first time in a while, I felt a glimmer of hope for what could come next. As the days turned into weeks, Lisa and I found ourselves navigating the winding path of rebuilding our marriage. Every day was a mixture of hope and hesitation. I knew that feelings of betrayal could resurface at any moment, sending me spiraling back to that dark place of confusion and anger. But we were both committed to making this work, and that commitment became the foundation upon which we began to reconstruct our relationship. One evening, we decided to attend a couples therapy session together. Lisa had suggested it, and I felt it was a good step for us. We needed tools to communicate more effectively and to address the wounds that lingered beneath the surface. As we sat in the therapist's office, I felt a sense of vulnerability wash over me. I was opening up about my feelings in a way I hadn't done in a long time, and it felt both liberating and terrifying. "Jake, can you share how Lisa's actions affected you?" the therapist prompted. I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. "It's hard to put into words," I started. "I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry. I thought I knew Lisa, and then suddenly everything I believed about our marriage was called into question. It made me second-guess myself and my worth." As I spoke, I could see Lisa's expression shift. Her eyes filled with tears as she listened, and I could sense her remorse. "I'm so sorry, Jake. I never wanted to hurt you," she said, her voice trembling. "I was selfish, and I didn't think about how my actions would affect you." As the session continued, we both started to peel back the layers of our pain. Lisa shared her feelings of loneliness and how she had felt increasingly disconnected from me due to my work schedule. I listened and, in turn, explained how my work had been a source of pride for me but had also taken a toll on our relationship. By the end of the hour, I felt a cautious sense of relief. We were beginning to understand each other again, and that was a step in the right direction. After several therapy sessions, we started to notice shifts in our communication. Lisa was more transparent about her feelings, and I was learning to express mine without fear of retribution. But even as we made progress, the specter of her infidelity still loomed large. I had moments of doubt and insecurity, particularly when I thought about her time with Mike. One particularly challenging evening, I found myself replaying old memories in my mind. I was scrolling through photos on my phone when I stumbled upon a picture of us from a vacation we took before everything fell apart. I felt a pang of nostalgia mixed with sadness. I looked up to see Lisa watching me from across the room. "What's wrong?" she asked, her expression concerned. I hesitated, unsure of how to articulate my feelings. "I was just thinking about how much we used to enjoy each other's company. It feels like ages ago," I admitted, my voice heavy. Lisa walked over and sat beside me, taking my hand in hers. "I miss that too. I want to get back to that place. I know I can't erase the past, but I'm here now, and I want to be better for you," she said. Her sincerity struck a chord, and for the first time in a while I felt a flicker of hope. "I think we're moving in the right direction, but it's going to take time for me to fully heal," I said, looking her in the eyes. "I understand," she replied, her voice steady. "I'm willing to put in the work. I know I messed up, but I want to prove to you that I'm committed to making this right." With that conversation, we began to establish a new rhythm in our lives. We started planning regular date nights, and I made a conscious effort to set boundaries with work so that I could prioritize our relationship. It wasn't easy, but every small effort felt like a step toward healing. As the months passed, I began to notice something remarkable. The love between us started to grow again, albeit in a different form. It was no longer the naive love that had existed before. It was tempered by the fire of adversity. We were learning to appreciate each other in new ways, and it felt as if we were falling in love all over again. One night, as we curled up on the couch watching a movie, I glanced over at Lisa. She looked relaxed, a peaceful smile gracing her lips. My heart swelled with affection, and I felt a sense of warmth wash over me. It was a moment of contentment, something I had thought I might never feel again. "I really appreciate everything you're doing," I said, breaking the silence. "I know this hasn't been easy for either of us, but it feels like we're finally on the right track." "I feel it too," she replied, her eyes sparkling. "I'm so grateful we're working through this together." As we settled in for the rest of the night, I reflected on how far we had come. The journey was far from over, but I was learning to trust again. The pain of betrayal would always be a part of our story, but it didn't have to define us. I realized that forgiveness was a process, one that required time and patience. It was an ongoing journey, but we were taking it together. In the quiet moments that followed, I felt a sense of peace. I knew that whatever lay ahead, Lisa and I were committed to facing it together. We were rebuilding our marriage brick by brick, and with every conversation, every shared laugh, and every moment of vulnerability, we were crafting a future that had the potential to be stronger than before. After everything, I had learned that love is not just about trust and connection. It's also about resilience and growth. And while the scars of betrayal might never fully fade, they could become part of a narrative filled with hope, understanding, and a deeper bond. As I held Lisa close that night, I knew we were ready to embrace whatever came next together.